It's barely even June, and summertime sadness might be the only way to describe what's going on in our nation's capital. We've got a president plagued by a pandemic that won't go away, and a sophomoric Congress who can't come to terms on any deal. And we've got an ex-president who can't even decide if he is up to the task of writing a weekly blog. Here it is on the Huddle. Let's figure it out. Welcome back to the Huddle. I'm Brendan Kownacki. It's great to be here and discuss the news of the week. We've got Marc Ross joining us here. Hey, Marc, I saw that there is a new law being pushed about in the United Kingdom. It's called the Right to Disconnect Bill, and that's where I think we should start today. I know you don't like it when I bother you outside of our broadcast hours. That's the nature of this bill. They want people to have the right to be able to step away from their technology, step away from their email and phones. It seems like something that Washington could really benefit from, but we obviously know people in Washington do not like to cut the cord. Tell me, what are you seeing in the news this week?
Well, as we know, democracy never rests. So good luck for global Britain if they want to shut off and only work, 6 hours a day. Good luck to them. I am watching a whole host of things. We're here in summer. The president, possibly the most power move I've ever seen, took the presidential helicopter to meet his wife for a birthday celebration out of Rehoboth Beach. Total power move. Normally it takes 3 hours by car. He did it in 35 minutes. I can't imagine like a bigger power play move than being able to take your own private copter from the White House to the beach. Hats off to the president for that. What did you think about that?
Oh, I think the president is showing that on the field, so to speak, he can be aggressive, he can be pursuing his agenda, but that he wants the right to disconnect. The president stepped out for his first big sit-down meal in the city of Washington this week. He stopped at Steven Starr's French restaurant, Les Diplomats, a favorite for many people, and he had lunch with the First Lady, as well as Vice President Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff. This was gathering crowds on the sidewalks, wishing the president and the vice president well as they came out to cheers, people waving at them, watching the motorcade right in central Washington, D.C. And then now the president is out riding bikes with his wife for her birthday. He's at the beach, landing, obviously, this swarm of helicopters in this amazing spot in the quiet town of Rehoboth Beach. This is the president clearly showing, I'm in charge and we're going to do it my way.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to say Joe Biden's probably the best retail politician we've seen in a number of years. He loves to be out and about. He loves to be in the streets. He loves to be with the people. And I think he's saying, like, this is how I can be president. I don't have to do the old model. I don't have to be like Trump. I don't have to be like Obama. I'm going to do it my way. And listen, 70th birthday, that's a pretty big deal. So for him to take off for a few days and go to the beach sounds pretty good. I spotted this column. I don't know if you saw this. Alex Thomas in, I think, Vanity Fair or Airmail, one of these posh newsletters that you probably read, was talking about how the White House press corps, who's used to hanging out in Honolulu, Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Martha's Vineyard, is now being decamped to slower, lower Delaware. Kind of interested what the buzz will be on that. Rehoboth is certainly a nice, quiet beach town, but not as posh as Honolulu or Martha's Vineyard. What are you hearing from the inside the buzz? Do you think the White House press corps is big in Delaware?
Oh, I did see some great photos of the press being relegated to a small patch of sand just to watch the helicopters land. And a good friend of mine from the Daily Mail, she posted a picture of a Delaware favorite, Grotto's Pizza. Certainly not the same kind of food you would get in Martha's Vineyard or at Mar-a-Lago. But to some people, it's just good old-fashioned classic Delaware. So I think it is interesting, but the president is in no way slacking off while we talk about these escapes that he's been having. He has been hard at work negotiating for his infrastructure plan, as well as continuing to fight the pandemic. Even with the mask mandate coming down, we still have a steady stream of infections And of course, now we've seen a lot of controversy surrounding emails being leaked out for Dr. Fauci and his negotiations early on in the pandemic era when it came to trying to figure out where did the virus come from and how should we tackle it. I think that one of the things that we saw just this past couple days was that the president met in the Oval Office with Shelley Moore Capito, a Republican from West Virginia. See how West Virginia manages to sneak its way back in again. And he wanted to talk about trying to get Republicans on board for his infrastructure plan. That $1 trillion isn't going to fund itself. And even though they both came out with pretty blasé statements after the fact, it does seem like negotiations are ongoing. Do you think that the president is going to be able to win over some Republicans?
No, but I think he's trying really hard. I think, there's he and his core, I think wants to see a bipartisan bill, getting back to like, there is this weird competition with any president, obviously. And I think there's competition with Biden, Trump, Obama. Biden is also a creature of the Senate. I think in his heart, he'd love to see a bipartisan bill. But as we saw, Secretary Pete said this week, listen, we should negotiate, but at a certain point, we got to move forward. And I think he's doing everything he can. There's a lot of politics, obviously. Shelley Moore Capito, I think Joe Manchin wants to see some kind of bipartisan compromise. And anytime you've got such a large piece of legislation, a lot of people are going to try to move forward. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't see enough Republican votes. 50-50 Senate. You got the House that's certainly in play for 2022. I think they're going to have to force this bill. And, frankly, the president only has a few more weeks. I mean, we hit the August recess. It's game over. They're gone for 6 weeks. And in fact, we're going to start the 2022 election not too far from here. What's interesting about that meeting, Shelley Moore Capito, I think, met with the president for 90 minutes. I was joking with some friends, they met for 90 minutes and it only cost the U.S. taxpayer, a few $100 billion of money that's going to be sent to West Virginia. I can't imagine what was promised. We'll probably see a naval base in Charleston, West Virginia any day now here. What do you think about this? Do you think there's going to be a bipartisan bill?
You really hit the nail on the head when you say that it's hard to see that with such close party lines right now that we're going to see something truly bipartisan. We did see a small tranche of Republicans voting over party lines when it came to the January 6th commission vote. And, I think it was 35 members in the House and just 5 people in the Senate. And so there are interested parties. We can say that. There are some people who want to put country over party. But at the same time, going into the next midterm election, when you have somebody like Kevin McCarthy, who's poised to try and become speaker if the Republicans are able to take the House, people don't want to stir up too much trouble within the caucus, within the party, because this could cost them valuable positioning if their party comes back into power. So I think right now it's going to be a very tense negotiation, and you're going to see the president offering a little bit of the metaphorical carrot, trying to bring people over, but this might not be enough. Hopefully his side of the party can manage to just squeak this over the finish line.
What's interesting, and we've talked about this now for weeks, obviously, both parties are playing high risk here. As we said, Joe Biden, I think in his heart, he's a senator, and he wants to see a bipartisan solution, especially around infrastructure. I mean, it seems if we can't agree on infrastructure in America, I'm not sure what we can agree on. But they've got to move forward. The clock is really ticking on Team Biden, their ability to get this done. We'll see. And he's spending a few days at the beach, then he's off to Europe for a whole whirlwind bunch of trips. He's only got maybe 6 or 7 weeks where he's actually in DC to make something happen. A lot of pressure, but we'll see. But I think at the end of the day, the Democrats, like most things, are going to say, we got to get this job done. Doesn't matter what's going to happen in 22. This is all about what's best for America. Let's pass this bill.
Well, what could tip that balance of power? And I say could when really that's not the right word, is there is a report out just recently here that former President Trump actually believes he would be reinstated to office along with the senators from Georgia now that there is continued re-auditing of the election results from 2020. This seems like one of the most nonsense things that I've ever read. Not that anybody thinks that we're going to
saying something.
That not even just that it could happen, but that there's apparently a belief to some people that it will happen, that it's going to happen sometime soon. Obviously, two more. If that Georgia election had gone a different way, that would certainly be swaying what's going on in the Senate. But the bigger thing, though, as we talked about last week, it's that specter of Trump working his way into the conversation. He shut down his blog after finding out that it was not being well received. It was not being popularly read. So the former president is now looking for his next platform du jour. He's still banned from Facebook, still banned from Twitter. I heard Don Jr. is offering $650 cameo videos, trying to raise money since he's off Twitter as well. What do we think about the Trump specter? Where have we come since last time around?
Well, listen, Trump is like always there, as we've talked about, but he's not there at the same time. Like, the fact that he shut down this blog, whatever the hell that thing was, realizing like, hey, contact's actually difficult. Hey, once you actually leave an office, nobody really gives an F about you. Also, the great Stephen Pressfield book, Nobody Wants to Read Your Stuff, a book that the president should have checked out. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but yet he's still there, right? I mean, the fact is he's finding it hard to communicate directly with the people. So, yeah, creating some other kind of crazy scenario. He's going to sneak back into office. Today, he sent out a press release, saying that if the Wuhan lab actually was the source of the leak, that $10 trillion should be sent from, I guess, Beijing to the rest of the world. The guy is just clutching for straws, but he's still there. I mean, everything we do, Trump is there. He just doesn't have the direct communications, but I think they'll sort it out. I mean, he's such a big presence. He'll figure this out. I'm sure there's some great platform that we haven't even thought of. And, hey, we were welcome. He's welcome to come here to the Huddle anytime he wants. We'd love to chat with him.
It will certainly be interesting with his level of cynicism and critique over both those who came before him and those who have come after, that when this president is faced with things like the opening of a presidential library, with the unveiling of an official portrait, there are still official ceremonial things that wrap up the Trump presidency that we haven't come anywhere close to. So...
But the thing is, like, the fact that none of these have happened is like, apparently is an indication that he is going to be back in power. He's going to run again. Like, if you were to launch his presidential library, that would be an indication that he's retired and he's done with politics. If there was some kind of portrait unveiling, same thing. Anyways, but Trump is always there. I think he's just trying to figure out his ground game for the politics for 2022. There was a column, I think, in the Post this week that, without mainstream media, Trump is being starved, which oddly enough was, I think, in the mainstream media, the Washington Post. I mean, the whole thing is just like crazy. And of course, here we are talking about the Trumpster once again, whether or not he can succeed, blogging or not.
But he did raise a point, which is getting out there in the lexicon, which is this further discussion about the lab in Wuhan, China. The Biden administration directed the intelligence community to further investigate the possibility that the virus may have actually come from a lab, not from a wet market, as was widely disseminated at different points during the pandemic. Now we've got these emails from Dr. Fauci where he's checking in with his counterparts in China, where he's talking about the treatment and response. How dangerous is this notion that China may get caught in a lie and may, in fact, have been the direct source of the COVID-19 virus?
It's pretty incalculable how damaging it would be to China. Whatever soft power they've had has been extinguished just by the fact that this was COVID, this whole transmission, whether or not it came from a lab or from a wet market. China's had a horrible soft power year. Supposedly this week, Xi Jinping told his comrades that they should be best, playing off Melania Trump, that you should end this, wolf warrior diplomacy, bring back the panda. But looking at the lab situation, there's two things I find super interesting. There's so much smoke and attention around this that does not happen by accident. And the fact is, Biden asked for 90 days for the intelligence community to figure this out. I would suspect our intelligence communities have a pretty good idea whether or not this happened. Maybe they're looking for a smoking gun email. Maybe they need some more digging. The 90-day thing is pretty interesting. That takes you up to August 24th. I think you're looking at a scenario where the Biden administration, for diplomatic reasons, is trying to give a pathway for China to get out of this scenario and give them some time to kind of figure it out. What's interesting, if this is a Chernobyl-like situation, when Chernobyl happened, the Russian government collapsed within months. I'm not saying the Chinese government's going to collapse overnight, but this is a horrendous situation. The president, every politician in the world is going to ask for reparations. It's a huge problem. The Chinese system isn't equipped for this. But regardless of that, I think what's interesting in the short term, what our viewers should think about is why this is getting so much attention now. And that's really mysterious. I don't think this happened by accident. I have a lot of confidence that not only are U.S. spy agencies, you have every intelligence agency in the world trying to figure this out.
Does it say something that President Biden made this directive to our intelligence community, that this is an issue of not even just diplomacy, but of diplomacy and secrecy? He didn't ask our labs to rerun tests and try and verify the path of the virus or the source of the virus, but he said that he believes there's a political investigation that needs to take place. Is that also somewhat of a soft threat to the Chinese, saying, we're looking at you and we want you to know?
Well, as we found out this week, with our collaboration with Denmark, U.S. spy agencies were even spying on Merkel and Macron. So, listen, American spy agencies, warning, they spy on people all the freaking time. So obviously we're spying on China 24/7. This 90-day thing, I think, is a caveat to say, listen, China, get your act together. Just let it in the WHO. Let in investigators. I think in some ways, the leak happened. Great. Let's address it. Let's make sure this never happens again going forward. The cover up here by the Chinese Communist Party is going to be the ultimate downfall, and it just doesn't look good. And there's something happening. None of this is happening by accident. So it's going to be super interesting. I think Biden goes over to Europe next week, meets with the G7. There's going to be obviously discussions about this. This is probably the most anti-China G7 we've seen in a decade. Coming out of that, you have the Brits sending this massive aircraft carrier to the Indo-Pacific. Every day you're hearing more and more about that part of the world. The pivot around the Wolf Warrior thing, there's a lot going on here. I think a summer of discontent is Xi Jinping. This August 24th date, you can imagine Jen Psaki going out to the press corps. She's going to have an answer. 90 days, hello, people can count. It's going to be super interesting.
No, I think all we can hope for is that the promise from Budweiser that all Americans aged 21 and over, if they want free beer on July 4th, hopefully it will make things better. That's the promise to show the progress we've had since the beginning of the pandemic. It has certainly been vastly improved, but it's not over yet.
That's a good point. Obviously, all these kind of gamification, all these kind of weird trivia, trips, degrees,
lotteries,
giving guns, lottery. It's crazy. The next pressure point on Team Biden, though, is going to be releasing vaccines for the rest of the world. As we've seen, we can obviously shore up the United States, but this thing is still circling around the planet, and making this vaccine available to underdeveloped regions around the world is going to be the next pressure point. Maybe something comes out of the G7 around that.
Especially if we want to travel again. We've talked about it many times, but those Olympics are coming up quick. And that's going to be one big example of how international travel hopefully does not lead to more outbreaks, more chaos. But on the sports side, I want to talk about another story that's hit the news this week, talking about tennis phenom Naomi Osaka. Tell us what you saw in this story where she's saying, I might be great at tennis, but I'm not great when it comes to facing the press. And she hit a little bit of backlash when it came to that, right?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of mistakes here. Let's unpack this. You and me both work in communications, and I think the best communicators can really use every tool available, but we know some people are better at certain tools than others. Some people like to write, some people like to blog, some people like to speak, podcasts, whatever, right? So, as you put somebody in a situation, you want them to be in the best platform possible. So I think there's that. I think the fact that Naomi up front said, listen, I don't want to do these things. I'm willing to pay the fine, but I still want to play in your tournament. she was addressing it. The fact that it was later revealed that she's suffering, for some kind of mental health challenges can't be dismissed. I mean, we've seen plenty of this. Obviously, your work with Invictus Games, Prince Harry, what we've seen with other athletes. I mean, this is a legit situation. I think the French Tennis Association, if anybody's handled this horribly, it's Roland Garros and what's going on. The French president of the Tennis Association, who, was so critical of her not speaking, came out in his press conference, simply just read a statement and took no questions. The whole thing is horrible. The third component I think was really interesting, though. This really speaks to the ability to communicate directly to folks. I mean, knowing Saki doesn't need to speak to reporters. I mean, the rise of direct to fans is happening more and more. The ability to control your own message, launch a podcast whenever you want, is going to happen more and more. Black eye for newspapers, horrible for Roland Garros. And also, mental health is front and center. I saw today Calm came out with a quick ad. If any other athletes don't want to talk to the press, they're willing to cover the fees, the fines. Super interesting. That's my analysis. What do you think? Defend the French.
I can't defend the French over this. It does raise a lot of questions about our relationship with the media, especially between the media and athletes, especially athletes of a certain age. We certainly have our college athletes, and sometimes in the high school realm as well, who are forced to face media like this when they're not being compensated at the same level as the major leagues. We've seen other athletes who were very begrudging, but still participated in these press conferences. I'm not saying that that makes it better. It makes it any less traumatizing if you're going through something. We've had, of course, the NFL player sitting there and only stating,
"I'm here so I won't get fined. I'm 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 just here so I won't get fined."
Baseball players like Bryce Harper calling out reporters, simply saying,
Bryce, that's a clown question, bro.
When asked ridiculous things about his personal life rather than the game itself. I think what's in play here is that we have to look at this relationship to say, why is there this immediate rehashing just after you've had possibly a crushing upset where something you trained for, you waited for, you put a lot of effort into, and now we're going to put you in front of the brightest lights and the most aggressive global press who want you to dissect why it is you weren't able to meet the challenge. It is a little bit like a zoo, and it is a little bit grueling in a way that I'm not sure every athlete's prepared for. Serena Williams came out and she said that she understands what her fellow tennis player is saying, but she noted that she said, I'm thick and you're thin, almost saying, I'm ready for it and you're not. Serena's also much older than this young woman is. I'm not sure how she felt when she was just a young player, and if she felt it was as traumatizing to be sitting there, sometimes being compared to her own sister who would beat her. So the question is this that absurd of a thing to have an athlete saying, I don't want to meet the press on the good days or bad? And are we pushing them too far?
Well, these press events, let's speak, it's all about earned media. It's all about marketing. There's all kinds of, corporate kind of tie-ins. It really, honestly, I do love any kind of interviews with athletes. I find sports endlessly entertaining. But is this the right format? I don't know. There's a reason why President Biden has a press team, right? There's a reason why every senator in the U.S. Senate has a press secretary, a communications director. There's a buffer. You don't see CEOs, even the biggest corporations in the world, speak to the press every day. So I think you're going to see a bigger rise in kind of a buffer, more athletes controlling the narrative, speaking when they want to, whether independently or directly to their own fans. Also, I think every league now, from the NC2A, MLB to, obviously the other tennis tournaments have all been put on notice. You got to straighten this up. And, listen, you and me, we know a lot of reporters. We love reporters. Not all of them ask the most serious questions all the time, because their environment is very sensationalized as well. They're in a huge competition. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see more people speaking directly to fans in a way they feel most comfortable, or communicating in a style and format that best suits them.
In the TikTok generation where you've only got 15 seconds, you better not miss your shot for a scandalous question that will get you the views.
You packed a lot of puns in there. I like that.
Well, Mark, One more thing before we go. I know you and I both have some great additions that we want in our huddle. Some interesting individuals and companies. Tell us today, Mark, who do you want in your huddle for episode 20?
Oh, sorry. I was so excited. I jumped in. I'm going with Guy Fieri, who just signed a 3-year deal worth reportedly $80 million, which is mind-boggling for his shows. Last year, his shows generated $230 million for the Discovery Networks, Triple D, going to diners, all this good stuff. Listen, Guy Fieri may be the most ridiculous person on the Food Network and somebody who I probably wouldn't want to hang out with. I don't know, but listen, from a discipline standpoint, super interesting. He stays in his lane. He's one of the most tenacious entrepreneurs out there, very likable, very focused. And it just shows you the ability, if you're yourself and you know your lane and communicate and own that niche, you can be really rich. So hats off to Guy Fieri. We'll see what he's doing. Obviously doing some good stuff around restaurants, helping them get back online. And you've got some good stories about Guy as well.
Yeah, I have actually spent some time with the man, and he is somebody who he absolutely knows the character he's playing towards the public, and he is a little bit of a visionary when it comes to trying to create unscripted, interesting television, all for the benefit of chefs and people in the food industry. He himself only got his show by winning a contest on Food Network 15 years later, an $80 million deal. That's a hell of a way to keep going.
What a country. Who knew there were so many ways to melt cheese? Who do you got in your huddle this week, Brendan?
Well, Mark, this week I am picking United Airlines, making a groundbreaking announcement this morning that they are now going to reintroduce supersonic flight. They said that they are going to be purchasing 15 supersonic jets from a company called Boom out of Denver. This company is basically creating the new iteration of the Concorde, which notoriously stopped flying in 2003. But this new plan from United is poised to deliver flights from San Francisco to Tokyo in just 6 hours, from New York to London in 3.5. This would be a game changer for business travelers and maybe even open up the possibility of faster domestic travel and lots of opportunities when it comes to, once again, uniting our global network here. There were a number of months, of course, during the pandemic where we saw people staying home, not as much air travel, but United is poised to reunite the globe. And I think there's no better way than hopping on a plane. And before you can even finish 2 viewings of Titanic, there you are over in Europe.
Yeah, the ability to leave New York and land in London for lunch, pretty amazing. Also, it shows you that United really is taking advantage of this past year to really kind of think about their business model going forward. And the ability to travel fast. Who wouldn't want to pay for that? Super excited to see that come online. Boom. What a name for an airline.
What a name. I think it's going to be great. They say that the first flight could happen as soon as 2026, with that service being available by 2029. We will certainly have to look at that and see if we can maybe one day take the Huddle supersonic.
I like it. Let's do it. Episode 2027.
All right, Mark. Well, thanks for joining us. And we will be back episode 20 on the books here at The Huddle.
Hey, Brendan, with all these companies jumping on board, trying to help people get vaccinated, the White House doing a big, kind of push out PSA effort. Did the White House reach out, see if the Huddle can be helpful?
Mark, the White House has engaged 1,000 barbershops to try to get more people vaccinated. They didn't call.